with key manufacturing trade associations here in India, OPPI, BDMA, and IDMA. And we were also privileged to have as a co-sponsor the Pharmacy Council of India, represented by Dr. B. Suresh. Now, I might also mention that USP is committed to being here in India, not only in terms of our building, but in terms of our staff. We envision in the coming years a staff of approximately 200 Indian nationals, and we are building this staff now directly under the leadership of Dr. Srinivasan, who is here with me today, and we are hiring a distinguished group of biologic scientists to staff its laboratories. Those biologic scientists will work with Dr. Surendranath and his staff, who have also had a strong role in building our scientific capability here in India. And I encourage you to visit our booth, which is just to the left of me, a few yards away, so that you can see how our standards are coming into being and being available to you. We recently concluded a biotechnology conclave on Saturday, February 9th, and that was a fascinating opportunity to begin our links with the distinguished scientific community that exists here in Hyderabad and in India. This is the Council of Experts. I won't go into the detail, but I will draw your attention to the fact that right now we have this new expert committee that is going to focus on this medicines compendium that is intended to be of service to you here in India and to the world at large. Now, I want to say a brief word in my closing statements about what's happening in the world of biotechnology medicines, and particularly the world of biosimilars or interchangeables. You all know that biosimilars and interchangeable biologics are achieving great force throughout the world. I might say that when I was at the US FDA in the 1990s, the idea of comparable medicines came about working with distinguished scientists at the agency. And the reason for that became clear. It was important for the idea of comparability to advance in order to allow post-approval change. At the time, I worked for Dr. David Kessler, who was commissioner of FDA, and I remember his frustration when somebody told them that in order to move a refrigerator, they had to file a manufacturing supplement. He said there must be an easier way. And out of some of those dialogues in the early and mid-90s came the idea of comparability, which allowed post-approval manufacturing changes that could ease changes for the manufacturer of biologics. Later on, the concept of comparability was taken up in ICH, and as you know, there are comparability documents in ICH that allow post-approval manufacturing changes and pre-approval ones as well. But what I show you here now is the further evolution of this concept in the United States with the conclusion now of our Biologic Price Competition and Innovation Act, which now creates a formal pathway for biosimilars and interchangeable biologics in the United States. I won't go into the details of this law. It has many complicated provisions, which you see here, but it creates the pathway in our Public Health Service Act by amplifying what we call the A pathway for new biologics and creating, in addition, what you see here, a K pathway for biosimilars or interchangeable medicines. I encourage you to read this act. It's a very interesting act, and it has many common elements to the Hatch-Waxman Act of 1984. I could speak to those common elements in terms of bioequivalence and pharmaceutical equivalence, but I don't have time to do that. We look forward to discussing this act with you now, and I know many of your companies are working closely with your agents in the United States to bring good biosimilar and interchangeable medicines to the people, the patients and practitioners of the United States. I also want to give great credit to the European community and the European Medicines Agency for creating a comparability pathway over the last 5 years for biosimilars in Europe. And they did this through community procedures that are well evolved and are based on guidances that are readily available to you, public standards again, that have allowed you to think about moving biosimilar medicines into the European community and the European Union. That has been successful, and it was built on the scientific public standard setting considerations of FDA and ICH in the 1990s. I have been privileged to be part of these standard setting activities. Now here I look at India, and I see great opportunities here in India. In my closing moments with you, I want to emphasize that I actually think India is in a position to leap ahead of the world in terms of understanding the science of biologic medicines, biosimilars, and interchangeable biologics. You are already beginning to build your guidelines, your rules, your laws, similar to those in the United States and in Europe. And I emphasize in closing that India in some ways has freedom of movement that doesn't exist in the United States and the European nations. Because of the way you work here, if you work to good public standards, you have the capacity that may be beyond those available in those more developed countries, where things occur behind closed doors at regulatory agencies, and intellectual property protection is particularly strong and limiting. Here in India, through your public discourses, such as those at this meeting in BioAsia, at USP's scientific meetings, at your scientific conclaves conducted by the government, by the state, and the trade associations, you can build sound public standards that can be the marvel of the world. And this is why USP is here. We're glad to help you get into more developed markets, but we want to work with you now so that you can work all over the globe. And in this, we work with other countries as well. We have strong relations in China, in Southeast Asian nations, in Latin America, and many other countries and regions of the world. I invite you all to another Science and Standards Setting Symposium that will occur in Seattle in October. And here again you see the topic being biologics and biotechnology. And we will report at that meeting on the success of our deliberations this week here in Hyderabad in India. Thank you so much for allowing me to be your keynote speaker. I speak from the heart that I say the future is yours and you will bring great medicines to the world, both chemicals and biologicals. Thank you very much.